Hello and welcome to CVFM Studios with me, Baker Lillivick, and today we're talking about an important but often overlooked health issue, head and neck cancer. It affects areas like the mouth, throat and voice box, and early detection can make all the difference. Awareness is still worryingly low, particularly among ethnic minority communities. This conversation is part of the Cancer Awareness Connect project, which aims to bridge the gap between public health messages and our diverse communities through radio, social media and outreach. Joining me in the studio is Pam Cooper from the Look Ahead Cancer Campaign, a charity working tirelessly across Tees Valley, South Durham and North Yorkshire to raise awareness, provide information and support those affected. Pam, thank you so much for joining us here at CVFM today. Of course, you're here to speak to us about something very important, which is head and neck cancer. Of course, you are the secretary with the Look Ahead Cancer Campaign. So, firstly, can you just tell us a little bit about why this cause matters to you and why it's so personal?
Well, I got involved in this quite a long time ago when I was in the NHS, and head and neck cancers were not very well known. So in the long run, we decided to set up a local charity to raise awareness of head and neck cancers. And the reason it remains important to me is that there's still a lot of lack of knowledge and lack of awareness out there. And because of that, people are dying unnecessarily when hopefully that might not happen if their symptoms are found early enough.
They are one of them cancers, you're right. You don't see as much awareness about them as other cancers that you may see around, and it's important that we do raise awareness. So I'm glad you've come in to have this conversation today. So I think it's best to ask you now, can you just explain a little bit to us about head and neck cancer, just to understand it and which specific areas it affects?
Okay. Well, you're quite right in saying they're not as well known, but they are the 8th most common cancer in this country today. So they do rank quite highly and they are very important. They include cancers in the mouth, all parts of the mouth, the throat, the larynx, the jaw, those areas in particular, really. We don't include cancers in the brain, because that's dealt with differently altogether, and also skin cancers are dealt with differently. So we're mainly dealing with those cancers that I just mentioned. The mouth, the most common of them all is cancer in the mouth.
So that's where it mainly starts, in the mouth.
Well, I'm not saying it mainly starts there, but of that group of cancers, the commonest of all is a mouth cancer, of which there are several types.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the key risk factors that you may experience? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the... I'll start that again. Can you tell us about some of the key risk factors? I mean, it's obvious that a lot of people do mention tobacco. That's one that does get mentioned a lot. Maybe like alcohol, poor oral hygiene, and any dietary advice that listeners should know about as to what can be a key risk factor to head and neck cancer.
Okay, the biggest risk factor of all is the use of tobacco in whatever shape or form, whether it's tobacco that is smoked or tobacco that's held in the mouth for any length of time. So we would recommend that, if at all possible, people don't use tobacco. The use of vapes by young people is an issue because it's tending to lead to nicotine dependence, and people might then go on to using cigarettes and other forms of tobacco. The next biggest risk factor is heavy drinking. Light drinking, is okay. Moderate drinking or drinking not at all is absolutely fine. But if people are drinking very heavily, particularly if they smoke as well, that is a major risk factor. And the third one is that I need to mention is human papillomavirus, a couple of strains of that, which can cause cancers in the cervix in women and in the mouth. Okay. And currently there is vaccination available against human papillomavirus. Just mention a couple of other things. You mentioned good diet. it is beneficial to have a good diet with plenty of fruit and vegetables. A varied diet is important. That will be protective. And good oral hygiene is important too. The other factor which has come up a bit is pollution. And there's just a little bit of evidence now that highly polluted environments, which can happen in some workplaces, can contribute to head and neck cancers.
So they're all of the main risk factors that can cause the cancer.
Having said that, sometimes these cancers do happen and there's no obvious reason for them. That would happen in, say, younger people. These cancers predominantly affect older people in the population, predominantly men, predominantly people in more disadvantaged backgrounds. Okay. But you do see the occasional case in a younger person for no obvious reason.
We'll come to talk about that very soon, but we'll touch upon your charity a bit again, the Look Ahead cancer campaign. So you obviously mainly cover Tees Valley, South Durham and North Yorkshire. So can you tell me a little bit about the barriers that you've noticed in raising awareness? Like you mentioned, it's something that you said you didn't see a lot of when you first got involved with the NHS, and just the work you do to encourage early detection within these communities.
Right, I think the main barriers really are people's unwillingness to think about cancer. You know, they see the word cancer on a stand, for example, and they walk in the other direction. It's a difficult subject to deal with. So there's fear, there's anxiety, and I think for a lot of people, they've got so many other things going on in their life. You know, they've maybe got caring responsibilities, they've got children, they've got elderly relatives they might be caring for. And some people might have other difficult family situations going on. So when people have got a lot going on in their lives, this is down at the bottom of the list, I'm afraid.
So it's something that can be quite easily passed by then and just not thought about.
Absolutely. So we take the opportunity when we can to meet up with people in the places where they go, particularly people in poorer environments, poorer areas of Teesside. And we take the opportunity to provide them with the information and, if possible, to talk a little bit about it. And quite a lot of issues are raised then.
I believe there is a specific awareness week for head and neck cancer. Can you tell me a little bit about when that takes place?
Well, my knowledge is that there's a specific month, which is called Mouth Cancer Action Month, which is in November. So though we do work right through the year, we focus a lot of our efforts in November, and we'll be doing that this year as well.
It sounds like November's a very important month, but every month can be important when it comes to diagnosis. So the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, of course, offers free screenings during Awareness Week. So can you tell me a little bit about these and about planning?
We are not involved with the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance. It's a worldwide organisation originating, I believe, in the United States. So we're not involved with that in any way, shape or form. We're a small local charity for people that would go to James Cook Hospital in Middlesbrough for treatment. We don't do screening because we are not medically qualified people. We are community workers. I'm public health background. So basically we're asking people to learn about the symptoms, and if they have these symptoms which are persisting for 3-4 weeks without getting better, they need to see a doctor or a dentist. That's our role. We don't actually screen people in a clinical sense.
But people can almost come to you for help, and then you can put them in
we would point them in the right
direction if the symptoms match up to.
And sometimes we do have to really encourage people to go and get advice. Sometimes they need to go for a second time or a second opinion or something like that, but we need to encourage people. They can go to dentists too for the oral cancers, the mouth cancers, but we're noticing that a lot of people in some of the areas we deal with are finding it quite difficult to see a dentist. They can't afford private dentists, and getting an NHS appointment is quite difficult. So basically, at the moment, we're saying, please see your GP. if the symptoms are persisting.
Absolutely. And I wanted to touch upon breaking down barriers with potential communities and the different minorities. But firstly, before we do talk about that, I read that it was statistically proven that more head and neck cancers are common in Teesside than elsewhere. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, that is correct. And it's linked to a number of factors. One is we've got more sort of deprived areas, if you like, than some parts of the country. And a lot of these cancers, head and neck included, they're more common in the more deprived areas. What was the other issue you asked about?
Oh, I'll ask that question now. I'll just yeah, so this one's about ethnic minorities. Can you tell me a little bit about how this may affect ethnic minorities too and people from diverse communities?
I don't think we have as much information as we would like about this. I understand that head and neck cancers are more common in Asian women than in Asian men, which is a big surprise to me because I think tobacco is used quite commonly in the Asian populations, and that will increase the risk. But I would have thought myself, and I could be wrong, that tobacco is not used as much amongst the female population. So, yes, there is variation. We don't have enough information on it right now. It would be very interesting to learn more about this.
So there's not as much data to show for that at the moment, then I'm guessing.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you think there's ever an issue with potential cultural barriers, language barriers, or trust in healthcare systems that impact early detection within these communities? People, like you say earlier, afraid to go and see their GP or afraid of hearing the word cancer.
Yeah, I think there may be issues of that kind, actually, and sometimes language barriers, which is why we've translated some of our materials into Urdu. And we would like to be able to overcome any of those barriers, but they could be very specific to very specific individuals rather than being able to talk about a group as a whole.
Is there any potential advice you would give to these people that are potentially not trusting the GP but need to go really to get checked out if there is any symptoms there?
I think it's so important to recognise that with cancers generally and with head and neck cancers specifically, the sooner they are found, the sooner they are treated, the better the outcome is likely to be. And the longer you leave it, it becomes more difficult to treat and the outcome may not be as good. So it's in your best interest. It could be difficult, it could create a lot of anxiety, but it is so important really just to take that step and see your doctor about any symptoms of this kind.
If we move on now to talk about the prevention and vaccination, you mentioned earlier that HPV is now a leading risk for the cancer. So what role do you think vaccination for that, especially amongst boys and men, play in prevention? And is that the message that's now being heard in communities?
Well, the vaccination against HPV only came in fairly recently, but we do understand that HPV, human papillomavirus, is a risk factor for cancer of the cervix in women, and a very important risk factor, and that's what is tested for now when people go for cervical smears. But it's also a risk factor for head and neck cancers as well. So vaccination is offered to year 8 children, boys and girls, in schools, and it is really important that these children are protected, not for the present time, but more for the future, if you like.
So it's important that they do take up this vaccine. Absolutely, when they're offered the opportunity.
Yes. We would strongly recommend that the vaccination is taken up, and it is available for some men as well that may have missed it, and they can inquire about whether it's available for them. HPV is passed on through skin-to-skin contact. The other issue about that is that it's passed on through sexual practices as well. So there's a need for everybody to think about their sexual behaviour and are they protecting themselves as best they can.
Absolutely, it's an important thing, and like you say, I'll go again. It's an important thing, like you said. Thank you very much for sharing that information. And can we talk a little bit about the work that Look Ahead have done to collaborate within the local communities as well?
Well, we do try actually to work within the communities, rather than in any other way. We have done other things in the past, like we had a big banner about head and neck cancer symptoms at a local football club. So that was quite good, because it saved us a lot of work, and everybody that went to see that football team and the opposing supporters, they would see all that information. So it was very cost efficient, if you like.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we do try and work in specific communities, and we will take up most opportunities, if it's feasible for us, to work in those communities, meet local people, talk to local people. And what we specifically did last year for November, Mouth Cancer Action Month, was we used mouth care packs in food banks. Obviously, in food banks, people are going to get food because they can't afford a lot of food. So we gave them toothpaste, toothbrushes with head and neck cancer symptom information. So that was an incentive for them to take the information, and we encouraged them to actually read it, not just throw it away. And we were able as well to pick up any concerns, any issues they had. And some people were quite keen to talk about experiences and, amongst their family, not just with head and neck cancer, but with some of the other cancers too. Unfortunately, I've got a background in cancer prevention work, so I was able to deal with most of those queries.
And talking along them lines, you mentioned symptoms. I wanted to ask you about symptoms, actually, because it's important that we do mention the signs. I've got the leaflet in front of me that you kindly shared with us. Mentions potential lumps in the neck or mouth, a hoarse voice, pain or difficulty swallowing, an ulcer or sore in the mouth, a sore or painful throat, red or white patches in the mouth. There's a lot of symptoms on this flyer. So can you tell me about a few of these?
It's important to remember that we can all get things like a sore throat, a hoarse voice. My voice is a little bit hoarse right now. And usually they're just a simple thing, nothing to worry about. If any of those symptoms that Baker's listed last for 3 or more weeks and they're not getting better, right, it needs medical advice. I came across a man in Middlesbrough last year, in one of the community hubs, and he'd had a swallowing problem for 6 months. Now, he should have had that attended to, and I encouraged him to see his doctor as soon as he possibly could. Okay. So those are the main symptoms that you've listed and are on our information sheets and things.
I think as well, I mean, I've had my own experiences. It's easy to panic sometimes when you do get something that's a potential symptom. I mean, most of the time, it's absolutely fine. It'll go away after a week or at most 2. But like you say, it's important to get that message out there that if it does stay for 3 to 4 weeks and you're still having problems.
It's important not to panic. It's important to think, this is probably nothing very important, but I do need to get it checked up. The other thing that we do find is people bury their heads in the sand. And I came across a guy a long time ago, actually, at an event we were involved in, and he had symptoms. And I said, have you seen your doctor? And he said, my wife tells me I'm wasting the doctor's time. And I said, you're never wasting the doctor's time. I said, please go as soon as you can. I don't know what happened to him, but it's not a waste of the doctor's time. It'll take a lot more time if those symptoms get worse and need more investigation and need more treatment.
You always go back to the quote, it's better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And with these cancers especially, because the treatment can be quite unpleasant as well, as you can imagine. I've seen people who've lost the power to speak.
Yeah.
I've seen people that find it very difficult to eat. You know, they have to have their food pureed and so on, and it's not good. So the sooner it's dealt with, the better, and it's really, really important.
It is, and I can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing this information, Pam, because it's really important that we do put this information out there, spread it to our listeners, viewers, people in the community, and we're always willing to support as much as we can. So thank you very much for sharing this. And just finally, how can our non-audience potentially, not non-audience, finally, how can our audience support your work, be that volunteering, donating, or just help spreading awareness? Because
they can do all those things, actually. What we really need most is more volunteers who are prepared to do something. And I say you can help us even if you can make a cup of tea, right? You don't have to have medical background, anything like that. Just a willingness to help and to do things. Just get information out to wherever you go. You know, if you go to the mosque, if you go to a community centre, a library, wherever, if you can, because we've only got a few people, so anybody that can help in their own area is brilliant. And you can contact us on enquiries at headandneck.info if you want any further information, and we'll do our best to help you.
Everything's something, so it does count. And one more question, Pam. If you were going to give advice to people regarding head and neck cancer and potentially getting checked, what would the advice be?
Know what the symptoms are. Know that if they persist, it could be a problem, and get medical attention as soon as possible.
Pam, thank you very much for joining us today
and
sharing all of the information on head and neck cancer.
Thank you.